Welcome to the Eerie Hour. Some places don't just haunt you, they wait. They wait in the forgotten corners of maps, along roads you travel 1,000 times, just out of sight. They wait for the moment your attention lapses, for the slightest flicker of curiosity to bloom into obsession. They wait in the silence that isn't just an absence of sound, but a presence all its own. This is one of those places. It calls to you, a whisper, promising answers you never knew you sought, leading you down paths you were never meant to find. If you enjoy descending into the strange and the forgotten, don't forget to like and subscribe and share your theories below. Now, let's begin. But remember, once the story starts, something always follows. You are driving the familiar highway, a ribbon of gray asphalt stretched across a landscape you know intimately. The rolling hills, the stand of old pines, the water tower marking the distant town. You could navigate this stretch blindfolded, your mind wandering, while your hands guide the wheel. The sun is setting, painting the sky in bruised purples and fading oranges, a sight you've seen countless times. Then you see it, a sign you have never seen before. It's small, weathered, tacked precariously to a post where no post should be. The faded white text is stark against the darkening wood. Exit 7B. There is no exit 7B on this highway. There is exit 7A, leading to the industrial park, and then a long, empty stretch before exit 8. But there it is, unmistakable, pointing towards a barely there track, veering off into the dense, unnamed woods that border this part of the road. A strange, almost physical tug pulls at you, a thread of inexplicable curiosity woven with a fine strand of dread. It is not the curiosity of a wrong turn discovered, but the potent, unsettling pull of something profoundly out of place. As you slow the car, drifting onto the shoulder, the familiar hum of the highway seems to recede abruptly, replaced by an unnerving silence. It's not the silence of remoteness, but an unnatural absence, as if the air itself has become thick and stagnant, muffling all natural sound. The gentle rustle of leaves, the distant calls of birds, the faint whirring of insects, all are gone, swallowed by this sudden deep quiet. The shadows stretching from the trees along the new, impossible road are longer, inkier than they should be, clinging to the ground like spilled oil. The light here is wrong, thinner, somehow muted. A cold knot tightens in your stomach. Every instinct screams that this is wrong, deeply, fundamentally wrong. The exit shouldn't exist. This road shouldn't be here. Yet, the compulsion to explore, to understand this anomaly, overrides the fear. It feels less like a decision and more like an inevitability, as if your steps have been guided towards this moment. It is a psychological fracture, a nagging certainty that something vital, something forgotten, lies down this forbidden path. The silence isn't just empty, it hums with a low, almost inaudible vibration, a distorted ambient sound that feels less heard and more felt. A pressure behind the eyes. For a fleeting second, you think you see a shape flicker at the edge of the dense woods lining the exit road. A movement too quick, too indistinct to name. And then, carried on the unnaturally still air, there is a scent, not unpleasant exactly, but alien, like damp earth mixed with something metallic and strangely sweet. The road simply exists, carved out of nowhere, waiting under the bruised sky. And the silence answers every unspoken question with its own deepening mystery. Welcome to the Eerie Hour. Some places don't just haunt you, they wait. They exist in the periphery, at the edge of vision, marked by an exit you never saw before, waiting for the precise moment you might be vulnerable enough, curious enough, lost enough to step across their unseen threshold. They don't advertise, they simply are, pulling at something deep within you, a forgotten thread of fear or fascination. They promise nothing, yet hint at everything you shouldn't know. Sometimes it's just a feeling, a weight in the air, a sense of being watched by something ancient and indifferent. But sometimes it's a physical marker, small and easily missed, until the day it suddenly isn't. The path diverges, not onto a clear road, but into a kind of absence, an invitation whispered only to you. If you enjoy descending into the strange and the forgotten, don't forget to like and subscribe, and share your theories below. Now, let's begin. But remember, once the story starts, something always follows. You are walking the familiar trail. It's the one you've taken 100 times, past the old oak with the lightning scar, beside the stream that chatters over smooth stones, through the patch of ferns that always smells of damp earth. Comfort lives here, in the predictable turn of the path, the unchanging light filtering through the canopy. But today, there is a divergence. It's not a signposted trail, not even a deer track, just a breaking in the undergrowth, barely noticeable, shrouded by ivy and shadow. It feels less like a path and more like a wound in the landscape. Yet something draws you to it, a quiet insistence, a feeling of being called by a sound that isn't there, or a color just beyond what you can see. You pause, the known world behind you suddenly feeling thin, like painted canvas. The air here, just at the edge of the opening, is stiller, cooler than the surrounding woods, carrying a scent that is neither leaf litter nor damp earth, but something metallic and sweet, like old pennies and fading perfume. It prickles at the back of your throat. The light seems to bend away from the opening, casting the entrance in an unnatural gloom, even though the sun is high. Doubt flickers. This is foolish. This is wrong. No one comes this way. It's forgotten for a reason. But the silent pull is stronger than the sensible voice. It hums beneath your skin, a low vibration that promises revelation, or perhaps just an end to the quiet questioning that has begun to echo in your own mind. You step toward the gap, leaving the known behind, the familiar sounds of the forest, the bird song, the rustling leaves, seeming to fade even before you fully cross the threshold. You are moving into the quiet, drawn by its unnatural depth, by the sheer wrongness of a path that shouldn't be there. The moment you step fully through the break in the ivy, the world does not simply change, it rearranges itself around you with a soft, unsettling click. The path you just left is no longer visible, the gap sealed by a curtain of ivy that looks ancient, untouched for centuries. Before you, the scenery is a mockery of the woods you know. Trees twist in impossible shapes, their branches Gordian knots against a sky that is a mockery of the woods you know. Trees twist in impossible shapes, their branches Gordian knots against the sky that is the wrong shade of bruised purple, even though the sun should be setting somewhere overhead. The air is thick now, not just with the metallic sweetness from the edge, but with an added layer of decay, damp rot, and something else entirely. A faint, electrical tang that makes the hairs on your arms stand on end. Your breath catches in your throat. Underfoot, the ground is not firm earth or soft leaf mold, but something yielding and spongy, like walking on compressed moss or wet velvet. It gives way just enough to feel unstable, unfamiliar, fundamentally wrong. Every step is tentative, a small act of faith in a place that has instantly betrayed your senses. The unsettling smell seems to deepen with the pressure of your footfalls, releasing trapped, noxious fumes. And the quiet is not empty here. It is full of a profound stillness that feels actively enforced, a silence that listens. Beneath it, just at the edge of hearing, is a low thrum, like distant machinery or the circulation of unseen blood. It's a sound that fills the space, usually occupied by the forest's natural symphony, a deep bass note vibrating in your chest. Disorientation settles over you like a cold shroud. Which way was the path? Which way did you come? The twisted trees offer no points of reference, their shapes shifting subtly as you look away and back. A wave of nausea rolls through you, a sudden, sickening doubt. Why did you come here? What was the pull? It feels like a different person made that decision moments ago. Someone foolish and naive. You doubt your sense of direction, your judgment, even the reality of the steps you just took. This is not a place, it is an alteration. A fundamental, undeniable change has occurred simply because you crossed an unseen line. You stumble, catching yourself on a tree trunk that feels cold and smooth like polished stone, despite its bark-like appearance. Your hand leaves a faint, dark smear. As you look down at your fingers, you see a small puddle gathered in a depression at the base of the tree. In its murky surface, you see a reflection. It is yours, or almost. The clothes are right, the face familiar, but the eyes are dark, empty hollows, and the mouth is drawn back in a silent, terrifying rictus. The reflection stares back, unblinking, and for a breath, it feels more real than you do. The silent thrum in the air deepens, and you realize the silence is not empty at all. It is breathing. It breathes with that low, rhythmic thrum, a sound that is both within you and all around you, a pervasive, unsettling presence that makes the wrong reflection in the puddle seem almost mundane by comparison. You pull your hand back, leaving the smear on the strange tree, the feeling of the place crawling under your skin like insects. The reflection in the puddle vanishes as you flinch back, the murky water settling, leaving only the distorted image of the bruised sky. But the feeling of being watched by those empty eyes persists. It is not just the reflection that is wrong, it is the surfaces themselves. Every smooth leaf, every patch of damp ground seems to hold a potential for mirroring, and you find yourself avoiding your gaze, avoiding the chance glimpse of something that is you but isn't. The air retains its thick, electrical tang, amplifying the smell of decay and the metallic sweetness until it is cloying, nauseating. It feels like breathing in rust and lies, movement in the periphery, a flicker behind the impossible trees, a shadow detaching itself from deeper shadow. You snap your head around, but there is nothing there, only the twisted trunks and the oppressive, watching silence, underscored by the low, rhythmic thrum. The sound motif has deepened. It is no longer just a vibration, but a pulse, a slow, heavy beat that seems to emanate from the spongy ground beneath your feet, resonating up through your bones. Thump, thump, thump. It's the sound of a slow, tired heart, or perhaps something being deliberately, carefully hammered. Deep beneath the surface, This persistent, rhythmic sound is the central uncanny event, a pulse within the pervasive stillness. The psychological fracture deepens from disorientation to a creeping sense of unreality. Is this a dream? A hallucination brought on by the strange air? You pinch your arm, but the pain feels distant, muffled, as if happening to someone else. The spongy ground feels less like moss now and more like flesh, yielding, slightly warm in places, with a disturbing resilience. It is a vivid atmospheric detail that makes your skin crawl. A profound fear washes over you, cold and absolute, not of something attacking you, but of dissolving, of losing the solid edges of yourself in this fluid, wrong place. You are afraid you might just cease to be, absorbed by the oppressive atmosphere and the thrumming ground. The motif of reflections intertwines with the pulse. In the brief, fleeting glimpses you allow yourself on shiny leaves or patches of still, black water, the reflection is still wrong, still empty-eyed. But now, the reflection's hand is sometimes raised, its fingers curled as if holding something or reaching. It doesn't move when you move. It seems to wait for you to look, performing its silent, unsettling gesture. The silence waits too, full of the pulse, full of the potential for other sounds that never quite surface. It's as if the silence is suppressing something, holding its breath. This place isn't dead, you think, a sudden, terrifying insight blooming in your mind. It's just holding still. That is the ambiguous line, offering a multitude of chilling implications about the nature of the place and the silence that defines it. The rhythmic thump continues, a steady, insistent beat in the heart of the unnatural quiet, a promise of something hidden just below the surface. The rhythmic thumping becomes the only constant in a world that actively resists permanence. It is no longer just a sound. It is the pulse of this place, a slow, steady beat that seems to govern the shifting reality. As you try to move forward, the twisted trees seem to rearrange themselves, blocking your path, or forcing you in directions you did not intend. You walk towards a landmark, a strangely glowing mushroom cluster on a moss-covered log, only for it to recede impossibly, the distance stretching without limit, while other identical clusters appear closer, mocking your attempts at navigation. The path itself becomes the supernatural event, a labyrinth that changes its own rules, ensuring you remain lost. The temperature drops sharply around you, pooling in pockets of intense cold like invisible wells. This cold isn't natural. It feels draining, like a hungry presence is drawing heat directly from your body. It is a vivid atmospheric detail that adds a physical layer to the psychological terror. Your teeth begin to chatter, and the cold seems to sharpen the metallic tang in the air, making it bite at your tongue. You feel an intense, irrational urge to find warmth, to bury yourself in the spongy ground despite its unsettling texture, to escape the predatory cold. The psychological fracture deepens into active delusion. You begin to see shapes moving in the extreme periphery of your vision, hunched forms, brief flashes of white or black, but they vanish the instant you try to focus on them. Are they real? Are they creations of a mind unraveling under the strain? The memory of the familiar path, of why you even left it, starts to feel like a story someone told you, not something you lived. You are suddenly unsure of your own name, a frightening blankness where that fundamental piece of identity should be. This terrifying amnesia is the psychological fracture, leaving you rootless and vulnerable in the shifting landscape. The recurring motifs intensify. The rhythmic thumping pulse seems to be communicating, not with words, but with variations in its tempo and intensity. Sometimes it speeds up, frantic. Other times it slows to an almost unbearable crawl. The reflections are everywhere now, not just in puddles, but in the slick bark of the trees, the surface of leaves. Even the air itself seems to hold a shimmering potential for mirroring. And in these many surfaces, the empty-eyed reflections are no longer just staring or gesturing. They are whispering, silently, mouths moving in horrifying synchronicity, their soundless voices seeming to vibrate directly into your skull, a chorus of distorted selves. The whispers aren't words you can understand, but you feel their intent, malevolent, curious, hungry. The tapping sound from Section 4 returns, layering over the thump and the silent whispers. A rapid, frantic tapping now, like fingers scratching against glass. You catch a glimpse of your reflection in a patch of air that shimmers like heat haze. It is surrounded by countless other reflections, all wearing your face, all whispering. And this time, one of them smiles, a slow, terrible stretching of the lips. It wasn't just the place that was changing, you whisper aloud, the sound swallowed instantly by the oppressive quiet and the underlying pulse. It was remembering you. The ambiguous line hangs in the thick air, heavy with the implication that this place isn't merely influencing you, but interacting with a past or potential self it somehow recognizes, a self perhaps more suited to its horrifying reality. The cold deepens, and the tapping grows more insistent, a drumbeat accompanying the silent chorus of your own twisted faces. The world reaches a climax of impossible sensation. The rhythmic thumping from the ground accelerates violently, a frantic, booming pulse that shakes the spongy earth beneath you. The silent whispers from the reflections are no longer silent. They break the surface of the unnatural quiet, coalescing into a dreadful, multi-voiced chorus, all speaking the same word, over and over, growing in volume and intensity. The word is your name. Spoken in 1,000 distorted timbres, high and reedy, low and guttural, childlike and ancient, it surrounds you, an inescapable assault on the senses. This is the central supernatural event. The place itself speaks, using your name as a key or an accusation. The air grows dry and static-charged, making your hair stand on end and causing tiny sparks to jump between your fingers and the strange surfaces around you. It carries the smell of ozone and fear, a vivid atmospheric detail that prickles at your skin. The pulsed light, seen briefly before, is now blinding flashes accompanying the spoken name, leaving afterimages burned onto your vision. Images of empty eyes and gaping mouths. The psychological fracture culminates in a complete loss of coherent thought. The onslaught of your name, spoken by the place and its reflections, shatters any remaining sense of self. Who are you if the very air screams your name? If your reflections accuse you, terror overwhelms you. Pure and animalistic, you stumble, trying to run, but the ground holds you fast, the spongy surface sticking to your feet. You are trapped, not by physical barriers, but by the sheer density of the wrongness, by the psychological weight of being named by the void. Guilt tears at you, guilt for stepping off the path, for being curious, for being here. It wasn't curiosity, it was a fatal flaw. The recurring motif of sound reaches its peak with the chorus of your name. The reflection motif is everywhere. They flicker in every surface, every leaf, every drop of moisture, their mouths moving in unison, screaming your name. Some of them reach out from their surfaces, their hands stretching as if to pull you in, their empty eyes fixed on you. They are no longer passive observers. They are active participants in your breakdown. This is what they wanted. This is why they waited. The frantic thumping peaks, then begins to slow. The screaming chorus of your name starts to fade, the voices peeling away one by one, leaving only echoes in the ringing silence. The light stabilizes, no longer flashing, though still the wrong, bruised color. The dry, static air loses its charge, leaving only the lingering scent of ozone and decay. You stand trembling, the spongy ground still clinging to your feet, the oppressive silence returning. The active onslaught is over. The aftermath is not peace, but a profound, aching hollowness. The intensity is gone, replaced by a quiet desolation. The trees are still twisted, the sky the wrong color, but the immediate, active malevolence has receded. It feels less like the place has finished with you, and more like it has simply paused, or perhaps taken what it needed. The psychological residue is immense. The memory of your name being screamed by the world is seared into your mind. The feeling of dissociation lingers. Are you truly you? Was that horror real, or a final elaborate delusion? You feel lighter somehow, as if a part of you was shed, absorbed by the place during the climax. There are so many unanswered questions. What was that place? What did the reflections want? What did they take? The recurring motifs return, but subtly changed. The profound, watching silence is back. But now it feels different, because you know what it can hold. It is no longer just quiet. It is pregnant with suppressed sound, with the potential for your name to erupt from it again at any moment. The thumping pulse is gone from the ground, but you feel phantom vibrations in your chest, a memory of its rhythm. The reflections are nowhere to be seen. No empty eyes stare back from the surfaces, but every polished stone, every still leaf, every drop of dew now feels threatening, like a loaded gun. You avoid looking at your own hands, your own face reflected in a stream, terrified of what you might see or not see. The mirrors are gone, but you know they saw you. They remember. The silence is deep, but it is not empty. It is waiting. And if you hear it again tonight, don't answer. Not yet. Welcome to the eerie hour. Some places don't just haunt you, they wait. This is one of those places. It begins with a road, forgotten and overgrown, that seems to lead away from everything you know and towards something else. It's not on any map you've ever seen, but you found it, or perhaps it found you. The air here feels thicker, older, carrying a silence that presses in on your ears until you almost yearn for noise. This is where the familiar bends, and reality frays like old rope. Here the shadows hold their breath, and the past isn't gone, merely waiting its turn. You follow the road, not out of curiosity anymore, but a growing, nameless compulsion. There is no turning back. If you enjoy descending into the strange and the forgotten, don't forget to like and subscribe, and share your theories below. Now, let's begin. But remember, once the story starts, something always follows. The forgotten road narrows. The overhanging branches of trees that seem too old and twisted scraping at your periphery. It feels less like walking and more like being swallowed gently by the landscape. The silence persists, but now it seems to hum beneath the surface, a low thrum that vibrates more in your bones than your ears. You notice the ground beneath your feet isn't quite right. What looked like dirt and gravel is a fine gray ash that clings to your shoes, silent and unnervingly soft. It muffles your footsteps completely. You are walking without making a sound. A sudden, sharp glint catches your eye. To your left, half buried in the ash, is a shard of glass, perhaps from a broken bottle or a car window long gone. As you pause, drawn by its unexpected sparkle in the dull light, you see your reflection in it. But it's not quite right. Your face is there, but it seems flatter, less defined, like a hasty sketch. And for a heartbeat, the expression isn't yours. It's a look of wide-eyed, desperate fear you don't feel at this precise moment. The feeling passes instantly, leaving you with a cold knot in your stomach. The air grows heavy, thick with a scent like damp earth and forgotten things, cloying and unpleasant. You start to feel a chilling sense of doubt creeping in. Did you really see that expression? Or is the strange air, the oppressive silence, already playing tricks? You shake your head, trying to clear it, but the image lingers behind your eyelids, your own distorted face staring back from the broken glass. You take a step away from the shard. But the road ahead seems subtly different now, the trees leaning in closer, the gray ash seeming to deepen. Like before, the silence answers. The road has ceased to be a road. The gray ash continues underfoot, but the trees give way to structures that shouldn't exist here. Crumbling walls of a material that resembles concrete, but feels spongy to the touch. Archways that lead into absolute darkness, and occasional, unsettlingly familiar domestic objects half buried in the ash, like a lone armchair covered in fine gray powder, or a child's rocking horse missing a leg. It's a landscape of decay and distortion. As you pass one of the archways, you hear it, a whisper. It's not the wind. The air is still and heavy. It sounds like your name, drawn out and thin, coming from the darkness beyond the arch. You freeze, your breath catching in your throat. You strain to hear it again, but only the persistent humming silence returns. Further on, you see it move, a shape in your periphery, low to the ground, like a bundle of rags, scuttling behind a mound of the spongy material. You whip your head around, but nothing is there. Just the still, gray landscape and the oppressive quiet. A pervasive paranoia begins to set in, prickling at the back of your neck. You feel watched, not by anything specific, but by the place itself, as if the decaying structures and silent ash are observing your every move. You glance down at a puddle of dark, still water collected in a hollow. Your reflection is clearer here, but it's looking over your shoulder at something you can't see. You spin around, heart hammering against your ribs, but there's nothing behind you but the empty, distorted landscape. This place isn't just abandoned, it's aware. The shapes that move, the whispers on the wind that isn't wind, they are phenomena directed at you, intended to mislead or unnerve. The silence itself seems to be holding its breath, waiting for you to react. You move through the distorted ruins, the feeling of being observed intensifying with every step. The structures become more defined, shifting from abstract decay into something resembling derelict buildings, yet impossibly wrong. A window appears high up in a crumbling wall. It's dark and blank, but you feel eyes behind it. A door stands alone in the ash, leaning at an unnatural angle. It's closed, but the air around it feels cold, colder than the rest of this strangely temperature-neutral place. You hesitate near the door, a compelling urge to open it warring with a deep dread. The silence that was a hum has now begun to fragment. You hear a faint, rhythmic tapping, like distant footsteps on a hard surface. Tap, tap, tap. It echoes strangely, seeming to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. It stops when you stop, starting again only when you move. Then, another sound emerges, a low, distorted melody, like music played through a broken speaker underwater. It's tuneless and unsettling, and beneath it all, the whispers return, sometimes just at the edge of hearing, sometimes clearer, like voices echoing from the profound quiet itself, saying things you almost understand, but don't. The stone of a nearby archway feels slimy under your fingertips, despite appearing dry. A beam that looks like wood is rough and splintered, but strangely yielding, like old foam. Your paranoia tightens its grip. You feel hunted, or worse, like you are being toyed with. You see your reflection in a piece of warped metal jutting from the ash. It smiles a wide, unnatural smile that isn't yours. Scattered among the ash and debris, you find evidence of others. A rusted wrench, a child's shoe tied with frayed laces, faint, desperate scratches on a stone slab that might once have been words, now illegible. Someone else was here, and their attempts to leave seem to have failed. The footsteps echo around you, seeming to multiply. The structures now stand taller, forming corridors and courtyards of impossible geometry. Walls meet at wrong angles, doors lead nowhere, and windows look out onto views that contradict the space you just passed through. The light itself seems unstable, flickering and shifting as if filtered through stained glass, though no grass is present. You feel utterly disoriented, the gray ash underfoot now seeming to absorb your weight, making each step a small struggle against a yielding resistance. The central uncanny event becomes the behavior of the very ground beneath you. It doesn't just resist, it seems to sigh. A low, drawn-out sound, like the exhalation of something vast and tired, accompanies a subtle ripple across the ash ahead of you, as if something massive is shifting just below the surface. The scent in the air changes, becoming sour and metallic, like old blood mixed with rust. Your psychological fracture deepens into a profound sense of unreality. You begin to doubt your memories, wondering if you ever were anywhere else, if this isn't the only place that has ever existed. You pass a large, cracked mirror leaning against a section of spongy wall. Your reflection looks back, but it's not alone. Standing directly behind you, impossibly close in the mirrored image, but absent in the physical space, is a figure, tall and gaunt, made of the same shifting shadows that you've glimpsed in your periphery. It doesn't move. It just watches you through the glass. The silence now feels like a held breath, waiting for the ground's next sigh. Is this place trapping you? Or was this where you were always meant to be? The warped reflection holds its silent vigil. The final stretch of this place feels less like a journey and more like an arrival at a horrifying conclusion. The buildings culminate in a vast, open space, like a courtyard, dominated by a central structure, perhaps a tower made of the spongy material, or a gaping maw in the ground. The air is thick with the sour metallic smell, and the light flickers violently now, plunging the courtyard into brief, startling darkness. The footsteps, the distorted music, the echoing whispers, they all converge here, a cacophony of unnatural sound that assaults your senses. The central supernatural event is the realization of the other's fate. Strewn across the courtyard are objects, not buried this time, but displayed. Discarded tools like the wrench you saw earlier, piles of gray ash shaped unnervingly like collapsed bodies, and personal items, a wedding ring, a child's toy, a pair of spectacles, all covered in a thin, shimmering layer that makes them look like unsettlingly realistic statues made of dust. The chilling cold emanates from these statues, a specific, targeted cold that seems to seep into your very bones. Your psychological state shatters. There is no more doubt, only a terrifying certainty about what this place is and what it does. You feel a profound, crushing guilt, as if their fate is somehow your fault, or you are destined to join them. The recurring motif confronts you everywhere. The walls of the courtyard are smooth, reflective surfaces, and in every single one, you see not just your own face, but a multitude of faces, contorted in silent screams, caught forever in the act of becoming ash. Your reflection is one of them, already beginning to fade, already merging with the others. You are here. You cannot leave. Can you see your own ending reflected back? The unnatural sounds fade, slowly, like a tide receding from a desolate shore. The flickering light softens, settling into a perpetual, dull twilight. You are standing, or perhaps kneeling, in the ash of the courtyard. The cold remains, a heavy cloak draped over your shoulders. The horror hasn't left. It has merely become ambient, a part of the air you breathe, the ground you stand on. The psychological residue is a persistent tremor beneath your skin, a knowledge that reality is a fragile, easily distorted thing. The paranoia has not vanished, only morphed into a quiet vigilance, an understanding that even if you somehow escape, the place or something from it might follow. The unanswered questions hang in the heavy air. What drew you here? What is this place? What became of the others, truly? And what piece of you has been left behind or taken? You look down at your hands, covered in the fine gray ash. They seem solid, real. But then, in the surface of a discarded tool lying nearby, you catch a fleeting reflection. It shows your hands, but they are pale, translucent, already beginning to resemble the dust from which they rise. The reflection is gone in an instant, but the image is seared into your mind. The place doesn't just haunt you, it changes you. And it waits. It is always waiting. And if you hear it again tonight, don't answer. Not yet. Welcome to the eerie hour. Some places don't just haunt you, they wait. If you enjoy descending into the strange and the forgotten, don't forget to like and subscribe, and share your theories below. Now, let's begin. But remember, once the story starts, something always follows. The air hangs thick and still in the grand hall, tasting of dust and something else, something like old copper or forgotten tears. You stand just inside the threshold, the heavy door creaking shut behind you, with a groan that settles deep in your bones. The house doesn't feel empty, not truly, but rather full of a patient, quiet presence. Dust motes dance in the single shaft of moonlight, slicing through a high, arched window, illuminating a path across the wide, worn floorboards. To her left, A vast, unlit fireplace yawns like a silent mouth. To your right, a long, dark corridor stretches into impenetrable shadow. There was a reason you came here, a whisper or a pull, but the specifics feel clouded, like trying to recall a dream moments after waking. A sudden chill doesn't just touch your skin, it seems to seep into your very marrow, raising gooseflesh you cannot soothe. In the dim light, a tarnished mirror hangs crookedly on the wall opposite the fireplace. Its surface is cloudy like old ice, but you catch a flicker within its depth, not a reflection of the hall, but something else, quick and gone. You step forward, drawn by an impulse you don't question. The silence isn't empty, only waiting. You move down the dark corridor, your footsteps strangely muted on the uncarpeted floor. The air here is colder, carrying a faint sweet scent, like decaying flowers or spilled perfume. Along the walls, portraits hang, their faces lost in shadow, eyes that feel like they follow your slow progress. You reach the end, expecting a wall, perhaps a door, but the corridor simply turns, leading into another identical stretch. There's a subtle shift in the pattern of the floorboards, a detail you register without consciously trying. You walk this new stretch, and it too turns, revealing the same corridor again. It is a loop, impossible, yet undeniable. You stop, a prickle of unease sharpening into genuine fear. How long have you been walking? The initial moments inside the house feel distant now, fuzzy around the edges. Your breath catches in your throat, ragged and loud in the oppressive quiet. You glance back down the corridor you just walked, expecting to see the turning you just came from, but it's gone, replaced by the same unending stretch ahead. The portraits seem closer now, their shadowed gazes pinning you in place. Ahead at the next impossible turn, you see it again, the glint of tarnished metal, the clouded surface of a mirror, hanging just as crookedly as the one in the hall, yet somehow different. It isn't right. This turning wasn't here a moment ago, was it? Your mind struggles to reconcile the space with the reality your senses are presenting. Perhaps the way out is the way in. The looping corridors twist and fold, each turning presenting not a new path, but a subtle, maddening alteration of the last. The sweet decay smell intensifies, becoming cloying, sickeningly sweet. The portraits on the walls are no longer just shadowy faces. Their eyes seem to hold a faint, unsettling luminescence in the perpetual gloom, following your bewildered movements. You try to count the turns, to map the impossible geometry, but the numbers blur, your sense of direction dissolving into a dizzying spiral. Time feels elastic. Minutes could be hours, hours could be minutes. You remember arriving, the creak of the door, but the moments immediately after feel like wet sand slipping through fingers. The cold has deepened, a penetrating chill that seems to radiate from the very structure of the house. You reach another turning, and there is the mirror again, but this time its surface is clearer, reflecting not the looping corridor, but a different room entirely. A small, cluttered parlor, dusted and still. You lean closer, breath fogging the cold glass slightly. In the reflection, a figure sits in an armchair, back to you, unnervingly still. You pull back, heart hammering against your ribs. Turning quickly, you look down the corridor expecting the parlor entrance, but there is only the endless, repeating path. It was only a reflection, wasn't it? But the reflected room felt more real than the ground beneath your feet. The air around you thickens, vibrating with a low, resonant hum that seems to originate everywhere and nowhere at once. It feels like the sound of the house breathing, a slow, mechanical intake and release that sets your teeth on edge. The looping paths begin to attack your very perception. Walls waver, blurring like heat haze. Floorboards shift and buckle underfoot, their texture changing from smooth wood to rough stone to something slick and unsettling. Familiar landmarks, a crack in the wall, a specific portrait's tilt, disappear entirely, replaced by uncanny approximations or nothing at all. You pass a doorway you know wasn't there a second ago, leading into absolute blackness that seems to absorb the faint light. How long have you been trapped in this shifting maze? The question echoes in your skull, unanswered and terrifying. Fragments of memory flicker. A name? A face? Yours? They dissolve before you can grasp them. You look down at your hands. They feel alien, unfamiliar tools connected to a body that is no longer entirely your own. The low hum deepens, and you realize with a jolt of pure horror that it sounds like your own heartbeat, amplified and distorted, externalized within this dreadful place. You clap your hands over your ears, but the sound is inside, echoing through bone and tissue. In a brief, horrifying flash of absolute clarity, you understand something fundamental and terrible about this house, about your connection to it, about the sound. And then the clarity is gone, leaving only the ringing hum and the profound confusion of who you are, lost in these unraveling paths. Ahead, at the next inevitable turn, a mirror hangs. It doesn't reflect the corridor or the illusory parlor. It shows only a swirling gray mist, within which something vaguely human-shaped seems to coalesce and dissipate. The mist in the mirror swirls, resolving briefly into a face that might be yours, twisted in a silent scream, before dissolving again into the featureless gray. The sound that feels like your own distorted heartbeat is constant now, a drumbeat against the inside of your skull, making coherent thought almost impossible. The very air seems to taste of confusion and dread, thick with the sickly sweet perfume and the metallic tang of fear. Paths don't just loop, they lead into walls that weren't there, into rooms that weren't expected. You push against what looks like solid wall, and your hand passes through as if it were smoke, reaching into the same oppressive corridor you just left. Your feet sink slightly into the floor in places, as if walking through shallow water, though nothing is visible. The faces in the portraits are clearer now, dozens of eyes fixed upon you, their expressions ranging from vacant curiosity to silent, accusing malice. You try to speak, to call out, but the sound that emerges is a wet gasp, alien to your ears. Who are you trying to call out to, and who would answer? The identity that felt tenuous moments ago has fragmented entirely. You see your reflection in the swirling mist of the mirror again, but it is younger, older, a stranger, all at once. You reach out towards it, not knowing why, and the mirror shatters inwardly with a sound like tearing silk. There is no glass, only a sudden rushing cold that passes through you, leaving you feeling profoundly hollowed out, like a shell. Did the mirror break, or did something inside it simply leave? The rushing cold subsides, leaving behind a stillness that feels even heavier than before. The low hum that mimicked your heartbeat has faded, replaced by a profound, aching silence, punctuated only by the soft, wet sound of your own breathing, which still feels foreign. The looping paths seem to have settled, for now, leading back to a semblance of the initial corridor, though the air remains heavy with the scent of decay and impossible things. You stand amidst the remnants of the shattered mirror, not shards of glass, but glistening particles that cling to the air, slowly dissipating. The feeling of dislocation persists, a phantom limb of identity that is no longer there. You remember walking down a corridor, the scent of perfume, the portraits, the looping paths, but the middle, the part where clarity flickered and vanished, remains a blank. Was there a mirror here? Was there a sound? The details are slippery, like eels in a dark pool. The house is quiet now, waiting. The portrait's eyes are just shadows again, their gazes indistinguishable from the gloom. The air is still cold, but the frantic chill has receded, replaced by a lingering numbness. You are here. You arrived. The rest is a fog, a story half forgotten upon waking. The mist from the shattered mirror is gone, but a single, small, dark particle remains clinging to the wall where it hung. It doesn't reflect anything. And if you hear it again tonight, don't answer. Not yet. Welcome to the eerie hour. Some places don't just haunt you, they wait. They settle into the quiet corners of the world, gather dust like unanswered questions, and listen. They listen for the sound of footsteps, the nervous breath, the turn of a forgotten key. They wait for someone to step across the threshold, to break the long vigil, and then they begin. If you enjoy descending into the strange and the forgotten, don't forget to like and subscribe, and share your theories below. Now, let's begin. But remember, once the story starts, something always follows. The house stands silhouetted against a sky that is perpetually bruised twilight. It is less a structure and more a long sigh made manifest, sinking into the overgrown earth as if weary of holding itself upright. You push the gate, and it groans a protest that dies quickly, swallowed by the heavy silence that blankets this place. It is not an empty silence, but one that feels deliberately constructed, thick with the weight of years unobserved. The air here smells of dust and decay, a scent that clings to your clothes and skin instantly, as if the house is already leaving its mark. Inside, the darkness is absolute, pressing in, yet you feel no urge to reach for a light. The absence of sound is the first uncanny thing. Your own breathing feels impossibly loud, a frantic counterpoint to the profound stillness. You move deeper, guided by an instinct you cannot name, only feel a pull towards the heart of the quiet. Every floorboard creaks a lament beneath your weight, each sound stark against the unnatural hush, like a stone dropped into still water. You pause in what might have been a parlor, dust motes dancing in the single shaft of weak light, filtering through a grimy window pane. On the far wall, barely visible in the gloom, hangs a large mirror, its surface opaque with age and neglect. It reflects nothing but the dust, the heavy air, and a sense of profound, waiting emptiness. A subtle shiver traces its way up your spine, a cold thread of apprehension weaving through the calm. The house holds its breath, or maybe it holds yours. You take another step, the silence closing in behind you like a door you didn't see shut. You find yourself moving through corridors that twist and turn with a logic that feels less like architecture and more like memory. The heavy silence persists, but now, if you listen closely, it is punctuated by something else. Faint sounds begin to surface, almost buried beneath the weight of the quiet. A soft, rhythmic tap, tap, tap seems to emanate from within the walls themselves, like tiny, patient fingers seeking an exit. It is easy at first to dismiss it as the house settling, the old wood groaning, but the regularity, the soft insistence, feels deliberate. You stop in a room where brittle wallpaper peels away like sunburned skin, revealing the lath beneath. Here, the tapping is slightly louder, closer, seeming to pulse in time with some unseen rhythm. It is an uncanny event. The sounds are not random. They follow a pattern that you begin to subconsciously anticipate. The air in this specific room is noticeably colder, raising gooseflesh despite the suffocating dustiness of the rest of the house. It is a vivid atmospheric detail, a pocket of unnatural chill that seems to condense the dread. You find yourself standing before another mirror, this one smaller, leaning against the wall as if abandoned. Its surface is cleaner than the first, though still clouded. You lean closer, peering into the murky glass, and catch a fleeting movement in your periphery, behind your own reflection. It is gone the instant you try to focus on it. This moment of psychological fracture arrives as doubt. Did you really see it? Or is the house playing tricks, using the sounds and the stillness to erode your certainty? The mirror serves as a recurring symbolic motif, its surface a barrier, a question. Perhaps the house remembers better than you do, and it shows only what it wants you to see. The tapping continues, gentle but unwavering, a soft insistence from beyond the glass, from behind the crumbling walls. The soft tapping has migrated, or perhaps you have moved closer to its source. Now it seems to resonate most strongly near the largest mirror you've encountered so far, dominating one end of a long, narrow hallway. The sounds have changed subtly. The tapping is joined by a faint, almost subliminal static, like a radio tuned between stations, filled with whispered non-words. It wraps around the tap, 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 giving it a strange electric quality. It's no longer just sound. It feels like pressure building behind your eyes. This is the central uncanny event. The sounds are not just present, they are interactive. When you hold your breath, the tapping seems to pause for a fraction of a second before resuming. When you shift your weight, a faint scraping accompanies the static near the mirror. It feels as though the house, or whatever resides within its walls, is aware of you, observing, responding in this strange language of soft, rhythmic noises. The vivid atmospheric detail here is the texture of the peeling wallpaper. Running your hand over it, the paper feels strangely warm and pliant, almost unnervingly soft beneath your fingertips, as if the house is a living thing. The moment of psychological fracture deepens into paranoia. You find yourself constantly glancing over your shoulder, half expecting to see the source of the sounds, the thing that responds. The fear is not of being attacked, but of being known, of having your presence acknowledged by something unseen and ancient. The large mirror at the end of the hall is the recurring symbolic motif, its dark glass seeming deeper now, less like a reflection and more like a window into a void. The static seems to pulse from its surface, a quiet hum beneath the tapping. The walls are thin here, but what lies beyond them? You stand before the mirror, the sounds pressing in, waiting. You move towards the large mirror at the end of the hall, drawn by the intensifying chorus of soft sounds. The tapping is faster now, more urgent, and the static has resolved into a low, resonant hum that vibrates in your bones. It feels less like something you hear and more like something you feel. This is the approach to a focal point within the forgotten place, a nexus where its influence is most potent. As you draw closer to the mirror, the central uncanny event occurs. The sounds coalesce into a single, overwhelming sensation. The tapping, the static, the hum, they merge into a deep, resonant frequency that doesn't just fill the air, but feels like it's vibrating through you, like being inside a struck bell. It is physically uncomfortable, a pressure on your chest, a buzzing behind your teeth. The vivid atmospheric detail is the air itself. It tastes coppery and thick, like licking an old coin or breathing before an electrical storm. This sensory assault triggers a profound psychological fracture. Not sudden shock, but a creeping, inevitable despair. You feel an overwhelming sense of futility, an understanding that arriving here was not a choice, but a trajectory you were always on. The recurring symbolic motif, the mirror, is now central. Its surface is no longer dark glass, but shimmers with the vibrations of the sound, showing not your reflection, but swirling, indistinct patterns, shifting colors. Impossible geometry. The sound motif culminates here. This resonant frequency is revealed to be the voice of the place, the vibration that holds it together, the hum that binds everything within its influence. You feel a terrible final realization dawn. Leaving is not just difficult, it is fundamentally impossible, because leaving means becoming part of this sound, this resonance, this place. To look away is a choice you can no longer make. You stand before the shimmering surface of the large mirror, the resonant sound not just heard, but felt as it pours from the glass. It vibrates through your bones, settles in your teeth, a constant, crushing pressure that steals the air from your lungs. This is the focal point, the core of the forgotten place. The central, uncanny event is the direct, overwhelming exposure to the place's reality-bending power, mediated by the mirror and the sound. The surface before you no longer shows anything recognizable. It is a maelstrom of light and shadow, a churning void from which the sound originates, yet it feels utterly solid, a tangible barrier, and a permeable threshold simultaneously. The vivid atmospheric detail is the taste in your mouth. It is not just coppery now, but tastes of dust and grief, ancient and sharp. This confrontation, abstract and terrifying, forces a psychological break. Despair washes over you, thick and suffocating, followed swiftly by a chilling acceptance of the inescapable truth about this place. It is not somewhere you visit, it is somewhere you become. Your perception of existence shifts profoundly. The world you knew outside feels distant, unreal, a faint echo compared to the absolute reality of this vibrating hum. The recurring symbolic motif, the mirror, is now revealed as the conduit, the mouth from which the place speaks. The sound motif culminates. It is the very essence of the place, a frequency that binds souls to its forgotten corners, a resonance that signifies not just entrapment, but integration. You are no longer standing before the mirror. You are standing within the sound, and in the swirling patterns, you see glimpses of things that were, and things that are now irrevocably part of the hum, lost within the vibration. The foreshadowing is complete. Leaving was never an option. You are already home, absorbed by the sound. The intense vibration recedes, pulling back like a tide, leaving behind a hollow, ringing silence that is perhaps more unsettling than the noise. The mirror still shimmers faintly, but the churning void is gone, replaced by a dark, reflective surface once more. You are still standing, though your body feels light, disconnected, as if tethered by the faintest thread. This is the aftermath of the horror, the quiet space after the storm. The psychological residue settles deep within you. Something fundamental has shifted, a part of you scoured away or perhaps etched into the resonance of the place. There is no clarity, only a profound internal quiet where the answers should be. The unanswered questions hang heavy in the air. What was the sound? What is this place? What exactly are you now? You glance at the mirror, the recurring motif making its final, unsettling appearance. It shows your reflection, but it feels subtly wrong. Your eyes holding a knowledge they did not possess before, or perhaps lacking something that was once there. The vivid atmospheric detail now is the sight of dust motes dancing in the faint light. No longer frantic, but moving in a slow, almost deliberate pattern, a silent choreography set to the vanished sound. Some reflections can never be wiped away. You turn away from the mirror, towards the door you entered through, but the path feels different, less like an exit and more like another hallway leading deeper inside. The house breathes around you, a soft, knowing sigh. And if you hear it again tonight, don't answer. Not yet. Welcome to the eerie hour. Some places don't just haunt you, they wait. This is one of them. It sits nestled among trees, the color of old bruises, a house that was never quite finished, yet feels impossibly ancient. You heard whispers, stories of its impossible angles and the things glimpsed in its dust-laden windows. They say the silence here is different, heavier, full of unheard echoes. It calls to a part of you that craves the strange, the edges of the map, the forgotten corners. It beckons with the promise of a secret held close by decaying wood and shadowed glass. If you enjoy descending into the strange and the forgotten, don't forget to like and subscribe, and share your theories below. Now, let's begin. But remember, once the story starts, something always follows. You push open the warped front door, and the air inside is immediately colder than the autumn breeze outside, carrying the sour scent of forgotten things and damp earth. Dust motes dance in the single shaft of light, slicing through a broken pane upstairs. The house groans around you, not like settling timbers, but like a living thing sighing. It breathes, slow and deep. Your steps echo unnervingly on the bare floorboards, too loud in this vast, expectant hush. You move deeper into the hall, drawn by an unseen current. A door stands ajar at the far end, leading into what must have been a parlor. The air thickens here, humid despite the chill. On the wall, a tall mirror hangs, its surface cloudy with age and grime, reflecting only indistinct shapes. But as you step closer, a flicker of movement catches your eye within the glass. Not a reflection of yourself, but something else, something quick and low to the ground, scuttling just outside the edge of your vision. You blink, and it's gone, leaving only the cloudy glass and your own startled face. A ripple of doubt passes through you. Was it just dust, or the tricks of poor light? Yet your heart hammers a frantic rhythm against your ribs. The silence now feels different, heavier, charged with a new, unsettling presence. You reach out tentatively towards the glass, your fingers stopping just short of the cold, reflecting surface. You could swear the cloudy depths hold a hidden room, a space just beyond reach, and perhaps just beyond understanding. What if the reflection isn't showing you what is, but what could be? The scent intensifies as you enter the parlor proper, a cloying sweetness beneath the dust, like wilting funeral flowers left too long. In the center of the room sits a single, high-backed chair upholstered in faded, damp velvet. It faces the mirror. You find yourself sitting in it, drawn by an unseen pull, and the plush fabric feels unnaturally cold against your skin. The reflection in the mirror seems clearer now, almost eager. Your own face stares back, but the eyes are too wide, too fixed. As you watch, the reflected room shifts subtly. The wallpaper, peeling and stained in reality, appears whole and vibrant in the glass, depicting a repeating pattern of intertwined vines and closed, watchful eyes. A slow, deliberate scratching begins, faint at first, seemingly coming from within the mirror itself, just behind the glass surface. It sounds like fingernails dragging over stone. Your hands start to tremble, your initial doubt hardening into a cold knot of fear in your stomach. This isn't light and dust. This is deliberate. The scratching grows louder, more insistent. You tear your gaze from the glass, looking around the physical room. Nothing. The sound is only in the reflection. Your mind begins to race, trying to rationalize. Old pipes? Rats in the walls? But the sound is precise, rhythmic, tied to the image in the glass. You feel a creeping sense of isolation, a profound loneliness settling over you. It seems the house holds secrets, and perhaps the most terrifying secrets are the ones it shows you, not just the ones it hides. Is the silence outside the mirror keeping something important from escaping or from getting in? The scratching stops abruptly, leaving the silence louder than before. A deep, resonant hum that vibrates in your bones. You stand, compelled to touch the mirror's surface this time. It's colder than ice, even through your sleeve. Your reflection is distorted now, elongated, grotesque, but the eyes are still too wide. As your fingers brush the glass, the mirror doesn't ripple like water, but the reflected room shudders. The wallpaper eyes in the glass seem to follow your movement. Suddenly, a new reflection appears beside yours in the glass. A tall, gaunt figure standing just behind you, shrouded in shadow, too indistinct to make out features, but undeniably there. You whip around, heart leaping into your throat, expecting to see someone, anything. But the room behind you is empty. Only the damp velvet chair and the peeling walls. A wave of nausea washes over you, your grip on reality loosening like a fraying rope. You stumble back from the mirror, hitting the opposite wall. The cold seeps through the plaster. The figure in the reflection remains, unmoving, silent, just behind where your physical self stands. It feels like your mind is fracturing, unable to reconcile what you see with what you know isn't there. The house isn't just a place, it's a lens, twisting sight, making the unseen visible, or perhaps making you visible to the unseen. What do you do when your own eyes lie to you, and the truth is found only in glass? Hours blur. You don't remember leaving the parlor, but now you are on the upper floor. The air here is heavy with the smell of ozone and something acrid, like burnt metal. Every step creaks like a scream. You find yourself in a small bedroom, its walls lined with mirrors of all sizes. Antique hand mirrors on a dressing table, a cheval mirror leaning in a corner, even small, circular mirrors embedded in the ceiling like strange eyes. They all reflect the room, fractured and overlapping, a dizzying kaleidoscope of angles and shadows. In each reflection, the gaunt figure stands behind you, multiplied, silent, a shadow in every viewpoint. One small mirror on the dressing table shows not the room, but a hallway you've never seen before, lit by a flickering, unseen light source. A faint, repetitive tapping sound emanates from this mirror, like a small stone dropped repeatedly on a wooden floor. It's a hypnotic, unsettling sound that seems to pull at the edges of your thoughts. You approach the dressing table, compelled to look closer at the tiny reflected hallway. Your reflection in the small mirror smiles, a slow, unnatural curve of the lips that doesn't match your own expression. A profound sense of dread floods your being, a horrifying realization that the reflection isn't just seeing what's there. It's acting independently. It watches you, it knows you're watching back, and it finds it amusing. Is this house a place where reflections live? The smile in the small mirror widens, stretching impossibly. The tapping quickens, becoming a frantic scuttling sound. The figure behind you in all the other reflections seems to lean closer. The ozone smell intensifies, making the air crackle. You feel a pressure behind your eyes, a sense of being watched from countless angles at once. Looking into the cheval mirror, you see your reflection recoil in fear, mirroring your own reaction, but its eyes are fixed on something you cannot see in the physical room. A whisper, dry and papery, brushes past your ear, though there's nothing there. Look closer, it seems to say, or perhaps you belong. You press your face close to the small mirror showing the hallway. The light within it dims, and a shape begins to emerge from the reflected darkness down the hall. The gaunt figure, walking towards the small mirror, towards you. It walks with a jerky, unnatural gait. Panic flares, hot and sharp, overriding the creeping dread. You yank your hand back from the dressing table, stumbling away from the constellation of mirrors. The room spins. You want to scream, but no sound comes out. Your breath catches in your throat, ragged and shallow. The reflection is not just an image, it is a doorway, and something is trying to come through. Or maybe it's not coming through, but coming for you, using the glass as a way to bridge the impossible distance. You don't remember leaving the mirrored room. Perhaps you didn't. The outside world now feels thin, washed out, like a faded photograph. The crisp autumn air feels wrong after the house's charged atmosphere. The silence of the ordinary world is hollow, incomplete, lacking the heavy, resonant presence of the forgotten place. You escaped, didn't you? You walked out the warped front door, leaving the mirrors and the whispers behind. But the house remains, a dark shape at the edge of your thoughts. You see reflections everywhere now, in shop windows, puddles, polished surfaces. And sometimes, just for a flicker, you see it again, the gaunt shape standing behind you, or the stretched, wrong smile on your own reflected face. The house is a scar on your mind, a persistent echo in your senses. Ordinary sounds can trigger disturbing memories. The tapping of rain on glass sounds like the scratching in the parlor mirror. The glint of light on metal like the ozone crackle. You feel a constant, low-level dread, a certainty that you are still connected, still being watched. Sleep offers no escape. Dreams are filled with endless mirrored hallways and silent, walking shapes. You look into your own eyes in the bathroom mirror, and for a terrifying moment, you see the wide hand, fixed stare of the reflection from the house. The forgotten place hasn't finished with you. It waits in every piece of glass, in every still surface, a silent promise of return. And if you hear it again tonight, don't answer. Not yet.